I want to scream, yay! We are at session 5 of day 1 of the 6 Million Seeds 2025 Child Nutrition Summit. And it is time for the cooking demo portion. And I'm so excited. We have with us today Chef Kev, who is typically located in Atlanta, but he is coming to us from somewhere else where he may or may not disclose. I don't know.
Washington, D.C. I'm coming to
All
you from
right.
Washington, D.C.
All right.
I
Nice.
came here to see what's going on with the food situation and the government up here. I'm on assignment.
I like that. Do that job, please. So glad to have you. So, as we've been talking, most of you who are on the call now have been with us throughout the day, and thank you so much for your time and your attention, your investment in child nutrition and learning more about how we can keep our kids healthy and protect them going forward. Today, we've been talking about child nutrition from the point of view or in the context of it being a social problem. It's a social issue that we confront. And the issue is how I'm terming it, and you can look this up. It's not my idea, it's not my term. It's called a wicked problem. And a wicked problem is it's a social issue that persists even though it's so obvious. Oh my gosh, could it be any more plain that it's an issue that needs to be resolved? We also have all the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, and the resources to handle this problem, to eradicate this problem, but it persists. Despite the fact that people want it to go, despite the fact that we can see our children are suffering under the burden of this food system, they're dealing with high blood pressure, heart disease, cancers, attention deficit, anxiety, depression, so many things, obesity, right? It goes on, but we do not have a viable, sustainable way to make a difference with this problem. So our summit now and forever will be about how do we protect our children? How do we unravel this problem? What can we do? And we know that we have to come at it from so many different angles. That is one of the other hallmarks of a wicked problem. There's no one answer. There's multiple answers, and there's no stopping. It does not stop. There are powers in place that want to keep this problem a problem. There's people who profit from this problem. You have the medical society. I don't think any doctors really want to make children sick, but they are not trained in a way that keeps children from getting sick. It's rampant in schools. It's shot through our entire society. So we are here to interrupt, to disrupt this problem, this knot called child nutrition issues in America, and all of the long-term and short-term consequences that result from feeding our children poor quality food. So now I'm going to step down off that soapbox. Thank you very much for entertaining me like that. And I'm going to introduce our guest for this evening's portion. This is session 5. Like I said, we are so grateful to have been introduced to Chef Kev. He is a plant-forward chef, third-generation food justice advocate, and visionary behind the Urban Oak Initiative. This is a man after my own heart, and I never even met him before. I'm so glad to meet you. He's a Morehouse graduate with deep roots in community finance. Chef Kev leads programs that expand access to healthy food, uplifts Black food entrepreneurs, and builds economic power through. I'm so moved. Thank you. I'll just be tearful for the rest of your introduction, so I'll stop now.
Just don't cry in the food. Just don't cry in the food.
I'm so glad I'm not there. I will not cry in the food.
But I
He
feel you.
created the Food Studio, the nation's first 100% plan-forward shared kitchen incubator. Okay, I'm letting you do it because I'll just be tearful.
I got you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, Merle, and be at the summit. I'm very honored to be here. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I actually am here on assignment. So I actually came up with a group of chefs through an organization called Wholesome Wave. Wholesome Wave is an organization that was founded many, many years ago by a couple of different chefs. One of them was Michelle Nichuan, who's a very popular and very well-known chef. And so what Wholesome Wave does is they actually were the organization behind doubling the EBT benefits at farmers markets to get more fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that. Uh, and we're up actually doing some work around helping, trying to get more dollars into local agriculture and support more local small businesses and more small farmers. And so we're going to be up here talking to some Congress people about those things, as well as issues around, SNAP, EBT, and TANF, and some of those things, and just kind of the food system, in general. And I think that is one of the things you mentioned, that, it's a problem that we have to attack from multiple directions. And I think that's what we have to really realize is that it's a system, right? It's a food system. It's not just a matter of giving someone food or buying food or eating food. It's a system, and it's a system, unfortunately, that is broken, very much broken right now with the infiltration of ultra processed foods and hyper processed foods and things of that nature. So, kudos to you all for doing this session and for really helping us get a better understanding of how we can continue to protect our children.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Absolutely. We're looking forward to your
Yep.
session. Let's
Yep.
jump
Yep.
in.
All right. So you want to go ahead and get started cooking? Y'all want to get started cooking? Ready to get cooking?
Let's go.
Okay.
You know, one thing I do want to say,
Yep.
we sent out your recipe to everybody.
Yep.
So if you are interested in cooking along, now's the time. Get your pot and your pans out, your knife, your cutting board, get all your stuff ready. Chef Kev has already got his food prepped and it's a one pot meal from what I understand. So you'll be able to
Indeed.
do that. If you're not cooking along, shame on you. No kidding. You can follow along the recipe and we can get going. I will see you on the backside of this
Indeed.
demo.
Indeed. Feel free to jump in anywhere you like. So today we're going to do one of my favorite dishes. It's called a Chipotle tofu taco. But basically, we're going to make the filling for it, which is a Chipotle tofu. It can be used for tacos, nachos, burritos. It can go on top of a salad. But it's one of our most favorite dishes that we prepare. We work a lot with children. And so Merle had mentioned that the Urban Oak Initiative is a nonprofit that my grandmother founded back in 1997. And we've always been focused on issues around children. Not always plant-based, but always around children and helping them eat healthier and eat better. And so this particular recipe is a really, really good one. Every child that I've ever met loves tacos, right? I haven't met anybody that doesn't love tacos, right? Tacos is kind of a universal food. So this recipe does a lot in that it has a very healthy source of protein, which is tofu. It also has green peppers, bell peppers, onions, garlic. It has some authentic Mexican spices, cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder. Real simple meal. You can make it with or without oil. I used a little bit of oil today, as you're going to see, but you can also make this an oilless mixture by just putting everything in a pot with water. So we're going to get it started with some onions and bell peppers. We're just going to begin sauteing those. Again, if you don't want to use oil, you don't have to. We could just saute in water. It's always a easy thing to do. Check my heat here. And this is also a really good meal to cook because it takes a little while to cook, but it allows you to kind of cook with your children. One of the things that we've discovered when we're working with kids and doing after school programs, if children are involved in the cooking, they're a lot more likely to eat the end result. So the sooner, the earlier that you get your children involved in cooking, the better it's going to be for them. So you see me just kind of stirring here. This is something super easy that any child can do. We have kids 5 years old that'll help us do this. Don't let them get too close to the stove, but you definitely can let them kind of saute the veggies. You can get a little step stool, maybe stand behind them, kind of assist them a little bit. But this is a very easy recipe to do. So we're going to pump it up here. And if you have any questions at all while we're going through this, just feel free to drop them in there. Tofu is a very popular and I would say sometimes misunderstood protein. There are a lot of different schools of thought out there around soy. Some people do soy, some people don't do soy, so on and so forth. But tofu specifically is one of the safest sources of soy that's out there, particularly if you get organic. And so today we have an organic tofu that we're going to use. Tofu has been around for more than 3,000 years, and it's a very simple recipe, not a lot of things in it. Soybeans, which are blended with water. Then you add what's called a coagulant, which is something the same thing that they would add to cheese to make the cheese turn into a hardened thing. So you add a coagulant. And tofu is often a seaweed derivative, a coagulant. and a little bit of calcium phosphate, I believe. And you put that in there, and then it forms a curd. So if you were in an Asian restaurant, they wouldn't call it tofu. Traditionally, it would be called bean curd, just like cheese curds. Curd is the process in which um, the protein solidifies into a solid. And so once once the beans solidify, they press it and they press out the water, and that makes the tofu. You have several different types of tofu as well. You have silken, which is a very soft and smooth tofu. You have firm, you have extra firm, and then you have super firm. That level of firmness just means that more water has been pressed out of the tofu. Today, we're using an extra firm version. Turn this up a little bit so we can get cooking a little quicker here. Extra firm version, but any of those versions would do it with the exception of silken. Silken is usually going to be used exclusively for things like smoothies and soups. So while those are sauteing, we're going to go ahead and add in the tofu. So this is some tofu here. I chopped it. You can kind of see the size of it. It's not super big. I chopped it. And you want to make it resemble chopped pieces of chicken or protein or something like that. We're just going to add that right in. Somebody talk to me while I'm cooking.
All right, I'll talk
Good
to you.
conversation. Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
I was here going, can I say something? I
Please
have
do.
questions. So, did you go to like formal training to become a chef, or
Mm,
is this something you just learned as
good
you
question.
through life?
Good question. So I actually I graduated from Morehouse with a degree in banking and finance, and I was an investment banker for about 1 month. And I found that my core values of honesty, integrity, compassion, and love weren't exactly compatible with that particular industry, particularly back in the early '90s.
Yeah, I hear that.
And so I left that, decided to go into hospitality. Not really sure why. I mean, I know why now, obviously because of the work that I do, but at that time I didn't really know. I had never, no one in my family had ever been in the hospitality industry or had ever done anything like that. But I just sort of felt a calling to it. I've always enjoyed being hospitable. A lot of that goes to my grandmother. She was from the country, and whenever you came over, there was always a pot of greens, of beans, of peas on the stove, and some cornbread, like every day. And it was always there because she was always like, you never know when somebody may come by want something to eat, right? And in the country, that was kind of the first question I asked when you go over anybody's house: Have you ate?
Right,
Or
right,
did you
right.
eat something? Have you had something to eat? So I started learning about different types of cuisines. I started working. Oh, excuse me. I started working in different restaurants to gain different types of experience about different types of cuisines. Then I opened up my own restaurant, and that was open for about a couple of years. Then we closed that. But through that process of learning those different things, opening a restaurant, taking a lot of different courses, I ultimately ended up becoming what they call a certified executive chef with the American Culinary Federation. That's where you go through, you take like a practical test and a written test and things like that. But I would be referred to as what you call self-taught.
All right.
So I did
Right.
not go to culinary school. Culinary school is great, but you can also, do the same thing by working in different restaurants and, kind of educating yourself on those things as well.
Yeah.
Uh, yep.
Yeah, I spent a small amount of time in art school, art
Mm,
classes. And
hmm.
one of the things they say, and I'll say it applies to cooking as well. If you already have a feel and a background and a family history and you grew up cooking or around good food, same thing with art. School can unteach you. It can train certain things out of you,
Definitely.
certain ways that you grew up, and that's for better and for worse, mostly for worse. So what you learned from your grandmother and all that stuff you learned growing up, that's
Definitely.
excellent training, right? You don't
Definitely.
need to go to the Culinary Institute of America to learn anything,
Yep.
really, if you're
Yep.
already trained by yourself.
Very
So,
much so. Yeah, so I did that for several years. Went on to have catering companies and a couple other businesses in the realm. And so probably, I guess maybe 6, 7 years ago now, I decided to make the move to transition more to advocating for plant-based cooking and plant-based eating. So even though I was a chef during that time in the earlier years, uh, I was not a plant-based or a vegan chef. I cooked everything, even though I personally observed a plant-based lifestyle. I really wasn't judging anyone. That was just kind of my profession at the time. So, it was really funny to get people say, "Oh my God, these ribs taste great, or this steak is great." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't have any idea how it tastes, but I'm glad you like it." So but it was kind of amazing, because once you do start cooking, it doesn't really. And I like to say this specifically for plant-based cooking. If you were to take meat, chicken, beef, what have you, and cook it without any seasonings, it would taste bland, right? And so when you're cooking plant-based food, the same applies. A lot of people, oh man, plant-based food doesn't have any flavor. You have to add the flavor. You have to build the flavor into it. So even right now, you notice that I'm sauteing the tofu, but I'm sauteing it along with the onions and the bell peppers and the garlic. I haven't even added any seasonings yet, but those seasonings are beginning to infuse in the tofu. So you want to treat your plant-based protein substitutes with the same love and care that you do your meat-based. I know people often when we cook tofu, I didn't have time to do it today, but sometimes we'll take it, we'll dry it out, and we'll marinate it overnight,
Mm,
just like you would beef or chicken or pork, right?
right.
You can sous vide it, you can soak it in seasonings, you can put it on the grill. You can do different processes to it, but you want to treat it the same way that you would treat other meats. So if you kind of see now, we've been cooking for a little while. See if we can get a little spotlight here. Some of them are a little brown. I don't know if you
Right.
can see that a little bit. It's getting a little brown there, and we'll kind of keep that process going. I'm using a non-stick skillet. Usually I'll use a cast iron skillet. You could use non-stick though. I'm personally not a fan of non-stick, but I'm not going to judge it. But non-stick is going to work better for this recipe. Uh, Cast iron is one of my favorites, but a good quality non-stick skillet. And just a side note for those of you out there who do use non-stick cookware, once it gets to the point that it's scratched on the bottom, you need to toss it out, right? Because once the bottom of the nonstick gets scratched, that means a lot of the material that it's made with or how it's sealed is now beginning to escape. So you also always want to only use plastic utensils
Mm.
or wooden utensils when you're using nonstick cookware. You never want to use metal. Yeah, I know some of them say that you can, but take my word for it, you don't want to do that, right? You never want to kind of scratch or expose the surface of any type of non-stick enamel or any type of cookware like that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for saying that. I agree 100%. We have a question from JC. Says, "Hi, Chef Kev. I love watching a chef cook. It's like watching art come to life. What what is your favorite dish to make?"
Anything ease. Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese. I love Asian food. Asian cuisine is probably my favorite. So anything noodles, veggies. Asian cuisine is really a lot more plant forward just by nature. In most Asian cultures, there's just a small amount of meat, and it's usually stir fried in with vegetables or served alongside of healthy vegetables. In Vietnam, you may get, a pho broth, but it's going to have, the noodles, the protein, which may be meat, but then it's going to have cilantro and bean sprouts and chili peppers and a lot of veggies with it. So I love Asian cuisine, anything Asian, anything Asian.
When you said I love anything ease, I thought you were going to say easy. That's great. So how
Yes.
did you come to did you say this and I missed it? How did you migrate from standard American if you were born and raised in Atlanta
Mhm,
style Southern
mhm,
cooking
mhm,
to
mhm.
plant-based foods?
Yep. So I was actually born in Southeast Missouri, which is even more rural. So I was born in a really small rural town. Our yearly ritual was every year towards the wintertime, they would go bring a cow and they'd string it up and they cut it and fabricate it, which means they cut up all the parts and we put it in the deep freezer. And that's what we eat on all winter. We ate, as they say, everything for the rooter to the tooter. That's somewhat of a southern. That means in terms of the hog, from the root of the hog to the end of the hog.
Right.
All sorts of crazy things, right? Pig ear sandwiches, pig's
Yeah.
feet, so on and so forth. So I did not grow up at all in a vegan household. But I will say, everyone in our community had gardens. So even though you may eat different types of proteins and meat proteins, every meal always had either greens, beans, peas, cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever was in the garden was. I remember oftentimes eating, maybe a small piece of meat, a plate of beans, and there would be, fresh raw spring onions or raw cucumbers with vinegar and salt and pepper. So always a vegetable component to everything that we did. But to get my story, when I left Missouri, I moved to Kansas City and ultimately came to Atlanta to go to Morehouse. And I think my first kind of inclination into eating a little bit better came. I was in a lunch line at Morehouse and I was getting ready and I just asked for some bacon. And there was a brother behind me from New York. And he said, Yo, I know you're not eating that swine. I said, No, I'm not eating swine. I'm getting the bacon, you know. I mean, we didn't call it swine in Missouri. It was just pigs. So swine is a term that was primarily like a northeastern term of, Islamic Muslims use that term a lot. But
Uh-huh.
that kind of sparked my thinking around, what I'm eating. I'd start listening to some of them. Many of them were in different groups. I think they were like the big Nation of Islam presence in Atlanta around Morehouse. They had a temple over in the area over Martin Luther King at that time. So a very heavy influence around diet, what they eat, how to eat. I graduated college, left, came back. I had a roommate who was actually transitioning into plant-based at the time. I was learning how to cook different types of foods. He'd bring home different plant-based recipes and plant-based foods, and I taste them. I love the texture. I love the taste. Being a chef or being a kind of a foodie at that time. And I said, well, hey, I can do this. And so after maybe around a month or two of eating more of that type of food, I noticed I began to feel better. I always suffered from things like I got strep throat notoriously. I had stomach issues, a lot of colds. Then I started doing, the plant based, and I started feeling great. And so for me, I've always been a person where if it works, I stick with it. And so I started that. And so probably for the next 6 years, I was vegan 100%. Then I got married, had kids. And at that time, it was really challenging, with children. We go to the parties and I don't want my vegan pizza. I want the pizza that they got, so
Mhm.
that type of thing. So you have that pressure. And so, I just be honest, we ended up kind of caving in to that and started adding back in like a little dairy, a little fish or what have you. Now it's a lot more easy. Then, this is probably 20 years ago. Very few vegan options like there are now. I mean, there might have been tofu, tempeh, and seitan. That was about it. And
Mhm.
Morningstar burgers. I mean, that was probably the extent of it. There really wasn't anything. There weren't pizzas and all the great things like they are now. So I think now it's a lot more prominent. And probably for the last 5 years, I've been going back and now I'm back, 100% vegan. And I say that to say to everyone, whether you're plant-based or not, uh, whatever your health journey is or your food journey is, you can always get on and get back on the train, right? It's
Mhm.
not like if you fall off, you just have to stay off. It's not like if you start eating bad, you have to continue eating bad. At any moment, you can make a decision. Hey, you know what? I'm going to go back and start eating better. I'm going to start doing different things. So never let food embarrass you. Never let your food choices embarrass you.
I like that. I think I'm gonna adopt that saying. Never let your food choices
Never let them embarrass you, on either side, because you'll get
Right.
embarrassed in the plant-based space too sometimes.
That's right.
We can be kind of, some plant-based people. I know, are you eating that? Do you know what that has in it?
Uh,
So we can be a little judgmental too, right? And but
yes,
but but
we
but
can.
but good should never be the enemy of great, right? So if we can't be 100% plant-based, maybe we can be 75 or 80 or 95, but that's better
That's
than,
right.
than nothing. So always celebrate your
Right.
wins.
Yeah. They say in the research world, right? I'm a nurse, so I tend to look at research for food and health and all that. And what they have determined is that the vegetables that we eat are actually related to our health outcomes in like a dose response kind of way. So
Mm,
the bigger the dose you get of plant-based foods, the better your health will be.
definitely. Definitely. 100%. I would agree with that 100% wholeheartedly. I think I'm going to do one thing real quick. So
Yep.
if you can see right now, I'm going to show you another look. This is without any seasonings or anything, but you can already see it's getting even more kind of
Yeah.
brown there. Right. So now we're going to add some seasonings. This is just already mixed together, but this is just smoked paprika, chili powder, cumin, garlic powder, onion powder. I mix all of those up ahead of time and I just keep a big batch of that around. So
Hmm.
anytime I want to make tacos or anything with kind of a southeastern flair, I can just sprinkle a little bit of that on there. Potatoes, veggies. So we're going to put a little bit of that on there. And I always tell people start off with half your seasoning mix and then you can add the rest, as you go along.
Right.
So we're going to stir that in.
So if you were gonna, now Chef Kev, I could ask questions all day, so I
Please
hope you
do.
don't
Please
mind.
do.
Okay, so if you were going to, let's say, do, this is a Southwest style, right? Mexican,
Yep.
Tex-Mex kind of thing. If you were gonna do something maybe Indian or Mediterranean, is this, I mean, how hard would it be to adjust?
Exact same. Once you kind of brown the tofu a little bit, you can put whatever season is on there because tofu is really neutral. Just like I said, like chicken or beef, it's really neutral. So it's not going to have any flavor to it until you infuse it. So, Asian would be good. Mediterranean would be good. You could buy pre-mixed Mediterranean spice mixes.
Mm,
You could buy salt-free ones,
mm,
then add in your salt. I don't really use a lot of salt. I use Bragg's a lot, which is a liquid aminos. I use a lot of
mm.
Bragg's instead of the salt. So I tend to be. I actually went to the doctor one time. They said I needed to eat more salt, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that's not common.
That's not coming at all. So we're just gonna keep on sauteing this. And again, great dish to cook with the kids because they can kind of watch it go from the different stages.
It looks great.
Yeah, so that's kind of my journey. And so since then we started Urban Oak. Like I said, my grandmother started in Missouri. We transferred it to Atlanta, Georgia, registered there, and we changed the mission to focus more on helping people learn how to eat more plant-based foods. We do what's called place-based work. We work in specifically one neighborhood in Atlanta known as Neighborhood Planning Unit V, which has unfortunately high levels of diabetes, cholesterol, other types of cardiometabolic diseases. It's one of the top zip codes in the country for food disparities, food deserts, low food access. There's a high concentration of public housing complexes that we work in traditionally,
Mm.
and you will find that, um, just very, very low levels of access to food in that area at all. There's not even a good wing restaurant over there.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it's right. It's really, so once we get the food studio online, that's going to be one of the things that we're doing. And the food studio is going to be, that's what you're looking at behind me on the screensaver there. That's a
Okay.
rendering of what it's
Okay.
going to look like. And so that is going to be a neighborhood, community-based shared kitchen. So we'll be able to do things for the community, but we'll also offer opportunities for plant-based value-added food producers. So people
All right.
making things like jams, jellies, sauces, tofu products, what have you. They'll be able to come in and be members and rent space to make their products. We have another program called the Foodpreneur Program where we help them get things like licensing, business planning, labeling, so that they can actually get on the shelves. We help them with what's called co-packing, where they can kind of get their product out to the mass market. So we're really trying to, as I said earlier, influence the food system, right? One thing we found early on was that we can buy food and we can give it to people, and that's great, but all they do is consume it,
Right.
right? So consumption is great, but production is even better, right?
Mm.
So if we're now the people producing the foods, that means that hopefully what's going to be in those corner stores is going to be produced by us, is going to be a little bit healthier, right? Right now we don't control anything that goes in the corner stores. That's Frito-Lay, Nabisco, Kraft,
That's
uh,
right.
those people. I don't know if you all know, but I'm sure some of the people on the call do, but in the 1980s, the major tobacco companies started buying all of the food companies, you know. So, they use the same playbook, which is early addiction. You remember in the 80s, everything all of a sudden there was Capri Suns and Lunchables and
Mm.
Jello pudding and pudding pops and all of these sorts of crazy kind of processed things. Uh, at that time, I was a free lunch kid, and so I remember distinctly, some of the wealthier kids would have their, My Little Pony lunch boxes and Thundercat lunch boxes, and they would be bragging on their little snacks and Hostess cupcakes. But the reality was at that time, my lunch meal that the school people prepared, that the school cafeteria person prepared, was actually a healthier lunch than what they were eating, right? Because they were eating nitrate infused lunch meats. They were eating Capri Suns with high fructose corn syrup. They was doing the Twinkies. At that time, the lunch lady still cooked the food. So it wasn't a whole lot better, but it was a little better. And I said it to say that this thing around processed foods and uh, how it affects children, it's not an income thing anymore, right? It's all the way, it's all across the board. The only thing that changes is the price. A lot of people are paying more for a name brand like Hostess or Twinkie. It's the same stuff that's in the generic brand on the corner store. You're just
Well, in
paying more
fact, it's
for
owned by the same company,
it.
right? They're just putting it out at different labels and different price points.
Exactly. Exactly. I was reading something the other day. It said that if things don't change, the current generation of children being born may not outlive their parents.
Oh, that's already for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
they've been decreasing the life expectancy of our children since 2015, I believe. Maybe in the last iteration of the life expectancy, they w- increased the life expectancy, but barely, and it has not come back to where it was. So still, our children are expected to die at younger age than their grandparents right now or than their parents. But that's what we're here to turn around, right? We don't have to go with that. We don't
Not at
have to
all.
buy
Not
into that. Let's
at
not,
all. Let's
right?
not.
Let's make them out to be
Let's
liars,
opt out. Let's opt out of
right?
that one.
I agree.
Another thing I wanted to mention, about this particular dish, you can really kind of control the portion size, because it is a one pot dish. You kind of know what you're doing. Uh, it can be a taco, or it can be a taco salad, or it can be a burrito, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit later. But that's one of the easier ways to work with your children and kind of control them if they're having issues around, obesity or other types of chronic illnesses, is look at the portion sizes. For adults, an average portion size of protein is 4 ounces, right?
Mm,
Most adults eat 3 times that amount at a meal, but it's 4 ounces.
mhm.
That's really all you need. So if you have young children, it's really more around 2 ounces, which is not a lot, but it does the trick. So, portion control is a really, 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 really big one.
Yeah. I was talking to a pediatrician a couple weeks ago, and she was saying that in her practice, she has, families come in and the kids are overweight and the parents are overweight, and she talks to them about what size plate are they feeding their children from.
Hmm.
And very often the plate it's an adult sized dinner plate. It's a 12-inch across kind of dinner plate. And she actually gives them, yeah, a smaller plate to eat, put the child's food on
Exactly.
so that it looks full, it looks amply portioned, but it's just inherently a smaller amount of food.
I had something I was speaking with someone the other day, and they were saying that they feel that some of the challenges they've had, they said when they were younger, their parents would always fill their plate up, give, like you said, a dinner size plate, and then would say, "Hey, don't waste that food, eat it
Right.
all."
That's right. That's a big problem. That's very common.
Right.
And then you get the person gets to be an adult and they
Still
have
get
been
more plate.
taught to clean their plate, right? Taught to load it up and taught to clean it. So that's contributes to weight management issues all over the place. I have to agree with your statement before that it's sometimes we think about lower income kids, we picture them as heavier or, they're eating more chips or more junk foods, more highly processed foods. But I have to agree with you. What I see is kids all over the country. It doesn't matter your
Across the
income
board.
level.
Yeah.
Every child is eating the
Yeah.
same
Same
garbage.
same bag of chips.
It is, and it's the same size.
Yeah,
In
same
fact, there was
size.
a book that came out a while back called How the Other Half Eats. And it talked about, so a low income mom may, with a couple extra dollars that she has that, she can pull together, maybe she does buy her child a bag of chips, right? But that doesn't happen just every day. In a higher income family, the kid gets an allowance and can walk to the store and get their own bag of chips
Every
every day,
single day.
every day.
Every day. Multiple kinds of chips,
That's
all
right.
flavors. Yeah.
That's right.
I
Can
mean,
barter
and
chips.
there's nothing wrong. We all want to, like we said, you don't want good to be the enemy of great, but I think, we do have to kind of, particularly when people are young, kind of give them good habits so they can have that level of control,
That's right.
as they get older.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, I love a good potato chip. I think most people in America, it's kind of hard not to be an American, not like potato chips and French fries.
That's
I mean,
right.
that's just real. I mean, it's difficult, right? Because it's pretty much,
Well,
you know,
they're
sandwich.
addictive. We love them.
Sandwich comes with chips, burgers come with fries, so, I think it's just all about, just kind of, pacing yourself and deciding, how much and how often, you're going to eat. When I was younger, again, I did eat burgers and fries, but the next day it was collard greens and cornbread.
Hmm. That's
So,
right. That's
so them
right.
greens they got it right on out, quite literally, So I think that's another challenge that I think we have also with young people is just the amount of fiber, right? Not a lot of fiber, in our diets now, particularly, in America. Everything is. I had a friend of mine from another country said, everything in America is dry, right? Sandwiches, chips, rice is dry. Sides are, if you look at other countries, Asian cuisine,
Mm,
Indian cuisine, Southeast Asian, Indian cuisine, you have stews, chutneys, curries,
mm,
soups,
mm, mm, mm,
broths,
mm,
right?
mm, mm.
Things that have high moisture content in them. So they all actually kind of help the body. They also have a lot of fiber in them naturally. Veggies, even the fried rice has veggies fried in it. It's
Mm,
not just
mm.
rice with gravy, right? It's just
Right.
rice with veggies. Uh, if it's Southeast Asian Indian food, it may be rice, but it's rice with lentils or
Mm,
rice with a stew or a chutney or something like that, or
mm,
with pickled veggies.
mm-hmm.
So a lot of times it's just a matter of maybe if you are going to have, a sandwich or some chips, put some celery sticks with it. Do a soup. Do a nice vegetable-based soup. You could do a tomato soup with no cream or butter. You could do a vegetable soup, but that would also kind of help balance it out a little bit,
Right.
right? If you are going to do, like a sandwich or the chips, kind of balance it out. So you kind of see now, it's getting even more
Yeah, it's beautiful.
beautiful. So we'll cook another couple of minutes. The thing with the tofu that you want to do really. And normally, if I'd cook this full time, it takes a little longer when I do it the regular way. But you want to kind of let it cook slowly, or either cook it in the oven to dry it out for about maybe an hour, right?
Mm,
Because tofu has a lot of water in it. So if you dry it out, then it becomes a lot more like meat in terms of the texture.
but yeah, yeah,
So you want to try to get as much of the water out of it as you can.
yeah. Now I have a question about that. I personally do not eat soy tofu because I'm sensitive to soy
Yep.
products, which is,
Yep.
a cross I have to bear in life.
Yeah.
But it's sad. But what I have seen is two different ways, or maybe three different things people do to get the water out.
Mhm.
One, there's the tofu press, right?
Yep.
You're expressing the water. Another is to freeze the tofu,
Yep.
right? That's one thing. And more recently, I've seen people say boil the tofu.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah. So supposedly boiling it changes the texture,
The
makes it
texture of it.
chewy again,
Okay.
more chewier.
Chewy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try
Yeah.
that one. But you know what? You mentioned the soy thing. There's actually a lot of non-soy tofu that's out there now too.
Yes.
Made with fava beans or chickpeas or lentils.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know,
Thankfully, I'm able to eat the chickpea one. I haven't
yeah,
found the fava bean one near
yeah.
me, but I hear they're not hard to make either, those kinds of
They're
tofus.
not. Yeah, you pretty much just puree the beans and put it in the press and let it do its thing. The other thing we also talk with people about when they're working with kids and trying to get them to eat a little bit healthier, stick to kind of the common things that kids like, right? So don't give your kid like a, you know, hummus and cucumber sandwich. Like that's not going to really work too well. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe do a vegan grilled cheese if you want to try that,
Yeah.
right? Or if you want to do a spaghetti, with vegans. Once you add anything with the sauce, spaghetti, chili, tacos, anything that's sauce based or kind of one pot based, by the time you've cooked it down and rendered it, it's gonna all taste the same anyway, pretty much, right? Whether you put
Correct.
tofu in there, or beef, or ground. I remember when ground turkey first came out, right? And people switched from ground beef to start eating more ground turkey.
Yeah.
Not a lot of difference for most people. I couldn't tell the
Yeah.
difference. The same thing is true with the tofu and even some of the meat substitutes. And I'll talk about that real quick. So I get a lot of questions a lot of times about, meat substitutes and the fact that they're processed, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are highly processed. And so this is just my personal opinion, kind of based on some of the research that's out there. There's a good movie called Game Changers
Yep.
that's out there that talks about the processed versus the natural. And I think in this particular thing, they were looking at a processed chicken burrito, processed plant-based chicken burrito against an organic uh, regular chicken burrito. And the processed chicken burrito still, for lack of a better word, kind of scored better. And it wasn't so much that it wasn't processed. It was just that in general, the body just digests plant material and plant matter easier. So
Hmm.
that's,
Hmm.
it's just kind of a fact. I tell people, hey, if you take a head of lettuce and you take a pound of steak and you put them outside for whatever reason for a couple of days, the lettuce is gone, the steak is still going to be there, one solid chunk. And that's all that digestion really is, right? Digestion is just heating up food. That's what your body does when you die. It just heats it up, right? That's how
Hmm.
you measure the calories. It burns it, right? And so, um, you can have the same thing, occur. But I think any increase in, plant-based food in your diet is going to be good. You shouldn't rely on plant-based, meat substitutes. We should all rely on whole foods as much as we possibly can. But if you had a choice between, ground beef and, ground veggie grounds, I would opt for the ground veggie grounds. That would be my opinion.
That's good. I was just at a conference a couple weeks ago, and there was one presentation that talked about um, even in your faux meats or meat analogs or your plant-based meats, your Beyonds, your Impossibles. There's so many different ones out now. All of them scored better than actual animal product meats. One thing you do have to, I don't want to say have to, but one thing that you can take into consideration these days is the presence of microplastics in the proteins. So they say that every animal protein for sure shows microplastics when they break it down and they analyze it. There's microplastics in all of the animal, certainly the animal flesh products. So, muscle, steaks, chops, ribs, all that has microplastics in. And even some of, I think they said all of the meat analogs also contain
Mhm.
microplastics to some degree. So, when you're looking at reasons not to eat meat, if you need to convince yourself again,
Yeah.
we still don't want to eat plastic is still not food, and we
Yeah,
still
right.
don't want to eat it, right?
Right. So look, so we're gonna go ahead and add some water now, just like you would regular taco season. That's gonna kind of deglaze the pan and everything. So we're gonna add water, kind of finish it up. And we're just gonna let that reduce for a little while, and then by the time it reduces, it'll be ready. Uh, Typically, if I were cooking it at home, I'd let it cook probably an hour and a half, right? Because the more it cooks, the
Wow.
longer it cooks, the better it's gonna be. Those flavors are
Okay.
kind of begin to infuse into the tofu or whatever you're cooking. But today we're on a little time limit, so we're gonna kind of speed it up a little bit.
Okay.
But I would encourage everyone, play around with it. Again, once you kind of have gotten the tofu to the point where it's kind of brown and crispy like that, you can do different kinds of seasonings. You could just do, salt and pepper if you wanted to. You could do, Asian season. You could put barbecue sauce on it, do like a chopped pork. You could do a
Mm.
lot of different things with it. You can put it on salads, so on and so forth.
So you know what I'm gonna add for our viewers? We have a template or a reference sheet that gives flavor profiles, spices, and seasoning by region of the world. So
Mm,
we have some at, like the Indian and the Mediterranean and the
mm,
North African and, different
Yep.
things. I will add that, get that added. Actually, VLAN will do the work on that. Thank goodness. Um, we have a sheet that we will add to the dashboard for people who are taking the VIP upgrade so that you can play with flavor profiles with tofu. You can make it Indian, add some coriander and some cumin and some onions and maybe some red peppers and some coconut milk. And, that would give you a good start on an Indian flavor profile or Mediterranean. We make a Mediterranean tofu scramble. My
That
husband
sounds
loves,
good.
like I said, I don't get to eat it, but he likes it.
That sounds
Where
good.
it's got roasted red peppers and
Oh, that
it's
sounds
got
really
fresh
good.
basil and some lemon and um, you can throw pine nuts in there if you're so interested or whatever.
Yep.
But
And
that
they have
works.
a lot of spice blends out there. I mean, there's a lot of spice blends out there at the store now. Even a lot of, Indian based ones that already have the sauce and the
Yes,
seasonings in them.
yes.
Very, very a lot of them. And I encourage people a lot of times, hey, just don't try to, average Indian meal may have 15 different spices in there. You don't want to try to go buy all of those at the store because you're only going to use like that much.
That's right. And you might not like it just all
You
that
may not
much.
like it. So get some of the, sometimes you have to watch, you obviously need to read the ingredients and see what's in there, see how much sodium is in there. But if that's what's stopping you from eating something overall that's good and plant-based, then go for, my thing has always been go for whatever is going to be easiest for you to make the healthiest meal. Right.
Yeah, so good.
So if you don't like chopping lettuce, you know, a fresh head of romaine is obviously ideal. But if you don't like chopping lettuce, get the one that's already chopped in the bag, right? As
Right.
opposed to not eating salad or anything at all, right?
So
So
true.
let's always never let good be the enemy of great. So just gonna keep this reduced in here, get a little taste. It's coming along pretty good.
It looks great.
Where's everyone in? Where are people from on the country? All over the country, you think, or different parts of the
Um,
country?
you know, that's a good question. So if people would put in the chat where you're from, that would be helpful. I know we have a fair number of us here. At least three of us are from the upper Midwest, not far
Okay.
from where I am, maybe four of us.
Okay, cool. Chicago,
Yeah.
Chi-Town in the house. Good deal.
Yeah, right, right. I'm in Wisconsin. We got
Okay.
somebody, a couple people from Chicago
Wisconsin.
area.
Okay, good
Yeah,
deal.
yeah. What? Hold on. I did not make dinner yet, and I need to check in with my husband who just
Please
came in.
do. I
I'll
got you.
be
I'll
all
take care
right.
of it.
Thanks.
No worries.
Thanks.
Somebody from Chicago visiting Florida. Good deal. Good deal.
We've got Marianne from near Seattle.
Okay, love Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I was up there this summer at a place called Carnation, Washington.
Mm.
Here's an interesting story. So this summer I was with the organization called the James Beard Foundation. So James Beard is like a chef's foundation, a chef's group. Some of you may have heard of the James Beard Award. They're actually based out of Chicago. Yeah, wow. Yeah. So they had
Mm-hmm.
a chef's boot camp where chefs went up there to learn about political advocacy and advocating for food related causes or agriculture, sustainability, food sustainability. It was held in Carnation, Washington, at the place which is the headquarters for the family that owned Carnation Milk. Some of you may be old enough to know
Oh,
Carnation Milk, right?
yeah.
So this is their farm. It's 850 acres, a huge, huge farm. It was bought by some food conglomerate, many, many years ago, and it was recently sold or given back to the family. They don't raise cows there anymore. They don't do dairy production or milk production or anything like that. But interestingly enough, they have an entire program built around sustainability, taking care of animals, soil conservation. And so they do a lot of research around soil conservation. They have like a retreat center there. So very, very, very interesting situation up there in Carnation, Washington. I had a great time. Beautiful country.
I love how there are more um, animal agriculturists who are coming to light and changing. I think the first one that I ever saw was T. Colin Campbell's family, who, when he did his research and co-wrote the book, The China Study, with his son, was really the sparked the change in their farm from being a dairy farm
Mm,
into more of a sanctuary. And then they just, from what I understand, phased out the animals.
right. Definitely.
And there are so many across the nation. Of course, there's smaller ones now, but um, that's something that this is so interesting to hear, because who would have thought that Carnation owning this
Right.
would have done that?
Yeah. Yeah. So they very interesting. Very interesting. I think a lot of it has to do with, many people just kind of want to go back to a much simpler, way of life in terms of, even people who do, eat certain things, they just wanted to be sustainably grown or raised. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier when I grew up, we'd find there'd be one cow, and we kind of dismantle that, but, nothing was put to waste. Everything was kind of used and
Mm-hmm.
honored and respected, you know.
Mm-hmm. I
I,
think
You
we
know,
were talking.
another thing that's going on too in the farming industry. My husband has a friend who was a dairy farmer and his father before him was a dairy farmer, and the pressure that they are feeling that on dairy farming, there's not. I mean, that milk consumption is going down
Down. Yeah.
across the country.
Yeah.
It's very hard business, and the pressure that's on them is huge from what comes from the USDA and the kind of deals that they are told they almost have to sign up for to get their milk approved. They have to go through it's amazing. It's
A
amazing.
lot.
It's a lot. So there's so many of them that are just like, look, I cannot sustain it. I can't do this work anymore with all of the laws and requirements and guidelines that they have to adhere to. They just can't. There's also the whole thing about just transitioning from dairy farming and cattle ranching to plants, and what that's doing. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of pressure. There's that actually, I hate to say this is going to sound kind of like a downer, but there's a lot of farmers that are actually committing suicide
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
over
Oh, yeah.
over
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing. It's not a sustainable in any way,
Mhm.
shape, or form. Is it a sustainable way of life that we've created
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
this
Where I'm
food
Fair to
from is,
system is a
say.
mess.
yeah, it's big agribusiness. So they grow a lot of the rice, the soybeans, all of that stuff. I mean, like hundreds of acres.
Mm,
And there've been stories of, like you said, unfortunately, farmers coming to their demise, farms being sold. Last time I was home, right after a lot of the current administration, a lot of the things they did with the farm bill, particularly with the exports. Where I'm from, a lot of the rice and the soy, it goes over to China. So a lot of people had already had the food in the ground, plants in the ground, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's just rotting. Like there's nowhere
yes,
for it to
can't
go.
sell it.
They can't sell it. There's nowhere for it to go. They already had, futures contracts, with China and everything. And so, I think again, it is a system, and we're starting to see how interconnected that system is, right? It's starting to break, and that's one of the reasons that food prices are going up so much. It's not so much that there's a supply, but things are happening with the food system. It's more
Yes.
expensive now. Labor is a lot more expensive now. Products, inputs are a lot more expensive now. So I think, the more that, we, even as Americans, can kind of grow a little bit, if you can grow some tomatoes and some cucumbers, you know, imagine if, 50,000 people started growing tomatoes and cucumbers. That puts a dent in it, right? That
Mm,
eases some of the pressure off of the system, right?
right.
If we can kind of do what we could. I mean, peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, real simple things, herbs, spices, things that you can grow
Absolutely.
and put into your food and, save a couple $100, a year here or there.
That's right. And
So
for
we're
every
almost
bit
done.
that
Yep. Yep. So
For
you
every bit
kind
we can grow, children are more likely to eat it. That is the good news
exactly.
about that.
So you can kind of see it here now. We'll do another little.
Mm,
It looks pretty good there. So
yeah.
there's another second. I'm gonna get the tortillas and everything set up, and we'll show you a couple of ways to plate this up, and then we'll kind of be at the 6 o'clock hour.
Okay. That's so funny. I swear I could smell that a couple minutes ago. Does anybody else have any questions for Chef Kev or any comments? Don't be shy. Put them in the chat. Chef Kev, we have a question for you. I don't know if you can hear me.
I'm listening. You just can't see
Okay.
me.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll talk while you're off camera. No problem. Question is, how do you start when creating a new recipe?
So that's a good question. I'm actually working on some right now. I think I start with the idea, so I start with whatever it is that I want to do or what I'm thinking about. It's funny you said that I was at the train station here in DC today, and someone had left a coffee table book in the food court area where I was eating, and it was about plants, and it had some asparagus, and so I'm going to make an asparagus dish. So that's kind of
Mm,
whatever I see, whatever I see, I think about it, and I decide to make it. I made a seitan, which is a wheat gluten protein. I made a seitan turkey this year. That was really, really good.
mm,
Interestingly enough, probably this year is probably the first year that I've started doing, recipes. I've been cooking food for so long. After a certain point, you kind of get tired of cooking the same things over and over again. You kind of need to be inspired. So that's kind of why I went to Carnation, Washington. I'm going to some other places to kind of get some more ideas, some more insight. So I think for me, the first thing I do is just kind of look at what it is that I want to make. If you're trying to transition into eating a little bit better, I typically would look at what are the things that you like to eat most. Like, what is your favorite dish? And then recreate that dish or dishes. That's the way that I start. And I try different things. I may try tofu. I may try jackfruit. I may try different things. Instapot. Gotta have it.
right? I
Gotta have it.
agree.
I gotta have it. I will say this for the longest though, I was against Instapots and air fryers because I was like, I'm a chef. I'll just boil it. You know what I'm saying? I'll use an oven until I bought one. But I will say with both the Instapot and the air fryer, you want to spend money and get a very, very high quality one, particularly air fryers. If when you turn your air fryer on, it smells like plastic or you kind of smell a little, that's not really a good air fryer, right? Because
Mm.
some air fryers, you're going to smell the non-stick metal in there. So you really want to spend money on a high quality one. Instapots are very, very good, very popular, but same thing. You want to make sure that if you can get one with a stainless steel pot, that'll be better than one that has a non-stick pot. So I always go for in terms of cookware, whether it's Instapot, air fryer, stainless steel, cast iron, maybe enamel, highly enameled, something like that. But you want to go with something that's a really, really durable cooking method. So we're gonna put this together for you all real quick here. So we have so this is gonna be just like she said earlier, this is just a little small plate, a little child size plate. So if they wanted a taco, we just do a quick little taco, put a little tofu there. They like lettuce. You could put a little lettuce, tomatoes, a little sauce if they ate salsa. I'm just gonna do lettuce and tomatoes. So this is one way right here. Little taco there. Right? Dig it. Another option, probably a funner option. Most kids like nachos. So you can do the same thing. Little tofu, sprinkle it on top there. If you have some black beans, you could do those as well. Again, little lettuce, tomato. You could add a little cilantro if your kids like cilantro, but it's super simple. Super simple.
That looks excellent.
But the thing is, with this type of mixture or anything, whether you do it, Mexican style, Asian style, barbecue style, you can freeze this. Somebody had a question about freezing it earlier. You can freeze this. It works well when you throw it out. So you can make a big batch of it, throw it out. Kids can do it after school. And again, a very, very kid-friendly recipe, and everything was cooked in just one pan. So not a lot in terms of dishes or cleanup. So very, very easy and simple dish to cook.
We have one comment. Recently heard that microwaving the tofu for a few minutes removes more water than any of the other methods.
I hadn't tried that one yet.
So how's it taste?
Tastes good. Tastes like dinner.
Great.
So that's it for me. Any other questions? Happy to answer them.
We had a comment that it looks like would be good with some broccoli and cauliflower.
That too. Yep. You can make a salad with it.
Ah, right.
Yeah, you could do a salad. You could do a taco salad with the chips on the side.
Looks great. Do you ever use any of the vegan cheeses, or do you make your own cheese?
I use some of them on occasion. I'm not a opponent of them, but I generally don't eat them. A lot of them, they're heavy in oil. They use a lot of oil, so I don't use a lot of that. A lot of cheese. I don't particularly care for the taste of it, but they work. It works well. The kids like it. I know the kids we work with, they like it. So it does work for them. But I was never really a big cheese fan, even when I ate, regular, other than on like pizza. So I really didn't have a lot of cheese on my tacos. So I was never really like a cheesy guy.
A cheese head.
I wasn't a cheesehead. Yeah. So
Right,
I didn't
right,
just eat it
right.
out the bag, even when I ate, dairy products. Love your
Yeah,
energy, JC.
yeah, totally, totally. Here's another one. Do you get much pushback from people about not cooking with oil? Seems like people are generally skeptical about that.
Kind of depends on what it is. I'll be honest with you. I don't cook with a lot of oil. Now I'm trying to ease back on it a little bit, just because it isn't as good for you. But I will admit, I'm kind of torn sometimes, right? Because you have this, healthy side, right? You want to eat better, eat healthier. But then I got this really bad chef side that like fried foods and, tempura battered vegetables and, panko crusted cauliflower, right? So you
Right.
kind of have that aspect of it. But I think it's about moderation and the quality of oil. Now I typically almost never now in the last 6 months, I don't really eat anything that's fried out. So I'm gonna tell y'all an industry secret, right, about fried food. You probably don't want to
Mm,
hear, but I'm gonna tell you this. So whenever you go out to any restaurant, Wing Spot, Red Lobster, vegan restaurant, whatever restaurant, for the most part, they're all frying their food in a specific type of frying oil, right? In order for commercial fryers to work, they have to have a specific type of oil, right? Because those fryers are on all day. They're not turning them on and turning them off every time you come and order something. So the fryer is always at 350 degrees all day long. When the temperature on the fryer drops, a fire, I mean the heating element automatically heats back up and it maintains the oil at 350. So that's why whenever you go in, you can always have hot fries. A lot of people, I want my fries hot. That's why they're able to drop them because the oil is always already cooking all day. Most of the time, most restaurants, even in their higher volume restaurants, they only change the oil maybe once a day. That's a good restaurant. That's a good one. Once a day. A lot of restaurants, maybe once every couple of days. So if you ever notice you're going to get some fries, they may be a little overcooked or they seem like they're a little soggy, greasy, they just taste a little funny. That's because the oil is old. And even once they clean it, they don't filter it sometimes. Oil also has what they call BHT. So BHT is an anti-foaming agent. And so natural oil, if you're at home and you're frying something and you put something in it, you see kind of the foam come up and the bubbles come up. That's a natural reaction that the oil has to whatever you're putting in it. Imagine if you're cooking hundreds, if not thousands of things over the course of a day or a couple of days, it would just be all foamed up. So they add a thing called BHT to it to keep it from foaming. It's not the healthiest thing in the world. And they add other things too. It also depends on the quality of the fryer oil. Some fryer oils that restaurants use may cost $75 for 35 pounds of oil. Some fryer oil that they use may cost $20.
Mm.
So the quality of the oil, right? They're not using 100%, peanut oil. I think Chick-fil-A uses 100% peanut oil. That's why their fries may taste a little better. McDonald's, those type places, I don't think they do. Definitely your wing spots, mom and pop wing spots, they don't do that. So you have to be really, really careful about that. So as a result, I don't really eat out I don't eat fried food out, that much because you never know, how long that oil has been there. And once the oil deteriorates past a certain point, it becomes carcinogenic, right? Because it's already been burned, it's already been processed. So it's now it's becomes, somewhat, cancer causing. And the last thing I'll say to, kind of, I guess, just ruin everybody's day who still who eats meat. Merle said I could just not withhold the truth. Uh, if you all don't know, if you grill meat, there's evidence now coming out. Grilling meat is some of the worst things that you can do if you char it, right? We used to like burn ends. When you eat burn ends, you're pretty much just eating like crushed up cancer.
Mm.
It's highly carcinogenic because it's pretty much carbon. It's like eating charcoal. So
Mm.
imagine going out eating charcoal. It's not burnt ends, right? It's it's
Right.
burnt flesh.
Right.
So I think a lot of you really have to kind of analyze, how you eat out. I don't really eat out as much as I used to because of some of those things. You never know what people are cooking with. You never know the type of oil that they're using. I limit my eating out to certain types of things, but definitely in the world of fried foods and grilled foods, if you're going to cook those things, you want to try to do them, at home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Knowing where your food comes from and what it's doing in your body once you eat it.
Important.
It really is. That is one way to do it. One way to stop you from eating a whole lot of stuff. That's for sure. That's great. Well, thank you so much. Let's see if we have any other. Doesn't look like we have any other questions. One last comment from Dr. Mary Ann Keel. She says, ew.
I can tell you some more stories if you want to hear them, but I'll save for next time. I got a lot of stories. I got a lot of stories.
Well, on
Cook
that
at
note,
home. That's the cook at home. That's the takeaway for everybody.
look, uh,
Cook at home.
oh, I'm taking notes. I got it. So thank you very much. That looks
Thank
like
you.
a great meal. I wish I was there. I would well, no, it's tofu, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to, but I'd sure love to.
Dig it.
It's been great speaking with you. This is the end of the last session of the evening, except for we're going to bounce over to the other link for the VIP folk, and we'll have, about 20 minutes or so with Chef Kev to ask him specific questions if anybody has any more, and we can hear more of your restaurant horror stories. We love those. So for tomorrow, we'll start again. Yeah, you think I would know what time we're going to start? Lynn, what time are we starting tomorrow, or do I have to look it up?
I believe it's
10 o'clock,
11.
11 your time.
11 o'clock Central Time. Thank you very
Yes.
much. And we will see you folks there at that time. I'm gonna actually look it up because I ought to know, but I can never
Yeah.
remember.
11 o'clock
All
with
right.
Ava.
Yes, we'll be talking to Ava Stubbe. She is a young young lady who is passionate about protecting the planet and animals. So she will be giving her a talk about that, followed by the next hour, I believe, is Dr. Silas Rao. He'll be doing more on planetary protection and stewardship. So we'll see you then. Those of you who are not bouncing over to the VIP session, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for time and your investment and your passion, your commitment to helping children stay healthy. And we'll wish you a good night and we'll catch you tomorrow. You guys have a good night. And for the VIPs, we'll bounce over to the other link.
Good men, y'all have a great week.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Chef Kev.
Take care.